Hey everyone, my name is Tejaswi. I work as the SEO director at Botpresso. We're a boutique SEO only firm that specializes in technical SEO to a great degree, as well as addressing content SEO and a couple of other topics within the sphere of SEO. So today, what I'd like to show you is how you could build a programmatic SEO site. And for this example, I will be building pages at scale addressing the keywords for cheap flights, as well as targeting cities and towns that don't necessarily have a lot of content already available with the big players like Kayak and Skyscanner and so on. The reason here is if we are building out pages at scale for a niche website, if you are trying to compete with the likes of Kayak and Booking and so on, you got to target cities in the tier 2 and tier 3 levels, because trying to compete against cities like London, Berlin, and so on would be highly competitive. And to see realistic results would obviously take a lot of effort and a lot of time. So the best way here would be to try to address the smaller search volume markets, starting with the tier 2 cities, the tier 3 cities. Keep in mind that there is still search volume for the cities, but there's very less competition. So there's this opportunity that you could potentially fill. And that's something that I'd like to show with this example of how you could build pages at scale by only you pulling in data on your Google Sheets and sending the data that you've collected to a fresh WordPress instance. For this example, I'll be using a WordPress site which sits on the domain travelpuck.com. So even after this video, you can always visit travelpuck.com and check out the example in real world. And obviously, to fill in a lot of content, we'll be looking at how we can use the OpenAI API to see what kind of data can you pull in, how can you structure certain prompts on Google Sheets using the AI API. And yeah, so let's get to it. And there we go. My bad. Okay, so we'll close this and we can jump to the sheet. In the interest of saving time, I've already collected a list of towns and cities that I think makes the most sense for us to target. Obviously, you'll see towns like cities like Jakarta, Delhi, Seoul, and Mexico, and so on, targeting the end city being Paris and a couple of 16 other cities, which had the highest amount of air traffic coming into their cities. So when I looked at the data on Google, I saw that Paris, Bangkok, London, Dubai, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, New York, all the major towns that you know very well, receiving the highest amount of people that are visiting their towns. So that's good. That's what we want to have. On the first column, I essentially have a list of cities that have a population threshold of above 100,000. So I want to make sure that we are addressing towns where it has a sizable population. So there's opportunities for people in those regions to be searching for traveling to one of these big city regions. And this is the kind of gap that we want to fill in with our pSEO, because you wouldn't see a lot of pages that are currently available with the big players where they would have like Bishkek to SEO, for example. Obviously, the search volumes wouldn't be that high, but you still create a lot of intent and you would create a pretty good level of connections between these smaller towns to the large scale cities that people want to visit. And if you can address that gap at scale, you would eventually have a sizable amount of search volume that you can take advantage of right at the beginning and not necessarily have to compete with the big players from day one. So there is some sizable traction that you can start to see at the beginning to validate your idea. Obviously, this example is purely geared towards the air traffic for programmatic SEO. If you have another niche that you think you can address, you should definitely do it. There's like plenty of opportunities there. One of the other opportunities that I can think of is essentially in the insurance industry, or if you take the banking industry, where you could set up like a bunch of bank branches targeting a certain region. So you have like tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns. You can have like bank A in X city, bank B in X city, and also use content OpenAI's API to list out, what makes that location a lot more informative, or that can add value to the searcher's use intent, then you should do it, right? So the opportunities is only limited by your imagination as to how you would want to structure your programmatic SEO. Okay, all right. So getting back to the idea here. So naturally, I looked at like probably, I believe I have like 16 top cities that have the highest amount of air volume. And on the column 1, I'm just looking at all the cities that have like a minimum threshold of roughly 100K population and pointing to the city with higher population. And the next thing that I've done is I've essentially used concatenation all across the page. So it's all about like, I want to show book cheap flights from, and then essentially link Jakarta to Paris, Delhi to Paris, and so on and so forth. So I would have like a neat title that's clearly telling users what they should be, what they're looking for. And at the same time, I'm doing this at scale. So overall, I have like roughly 10,000 odd pages. That is, looking towards the cities as well as looking into towns. Now, once that's done, I want to somehow monetize and also use a tool to allow users to search for their flight tickets, right? And also build in a nice monetization factor for the site. So one of the best affiliate platforms out there that is geared towards the travel industry is called as travelpayouts.com. You could obviously sign up with them. And because this is a fresh site, fresh account, you don't see a lot of numbers, but over time, after you've connected your site, you will see what's the level of impressions that the site is registering on your site, their widgets essentially, what kind of clicks, and if any payouts at all, obviously you'll be getting paid out here. They have plenty of programs from various travel providers. So for example, they've got tours and activities section, insurance. I hadn't seen that before, so that's pretty nice to see that. Obviously, I'm using Travel Puck as my project here, so I've already linked that. And then I can also see what kind of opportunities are there with flights. So there is many providers like Cheapo Air, Omeo, AirHelp. AirHelp, I think, is it's only for compensation for delayed flights. But yeah, you've also got Expedia, Trip, Kiwi, and so on. For this example, I'll be primarily using WayAway. So WayAway is a platform that was built by the folks who brought travel payouts itself. So there's like a higher level of support that you can expect from the team if you're looking for certain changes in the product. And personally, I also really like the way the UX plays out on their website. It's a lot more better. So yeah, it's like very cleanly done. It's addressing, a lot of, you can also create multi-city routes. It's also addressing topics like, economy, premium class, business, and so on. So it's a very nice aggregator platform that you could send your users to. And I feel like the UX would definitely increase your chances of a potential conversion as well. So when you click on WayAway project, some of the tools that they do provide you to allow you to essentially create like a travel platform at scale is to look at their widgets. The first one is their search form. So here you have like, you can essentially grab this code and put it into your WordPress post, which tells you like what's the origin, what's the destination, and so on. The way I'm structuring it is I'm essentially what I've already created is I've essentially grabbed the destination. So I already have like 16 destinations, so it's very easy for me to like copy paste it across the site. So for example, this is pretty much it. So you have like destination Paris, autocomplete, and the widget will look at the user's location and then pre-fill that with their location. So for example, I'm sitting in Bengaluru at the moment, so you can already see that it's pre-filled with Bengaluru. So it's pretty nicely done, and I feel like this can drive a lot of you can almost create like a well-functioning travel site already. So with that taken care of, what I've also done is essentially created or grabbed their calendar widget, their popular routes, and using these widgets, I've created content that is geared towards those main topics. So for example, I have like find the best deals to travel to Paris with this price calendar. So this one directly addresses the calendar widget, which they already have. So for me, it's a matter of just grabbing this calendar, pre-filling it with data as to which the destination city are the users looking for. And then the next one is what are the top 5 scheduled flights from London to Paris, or if you're taking a flight from destination A to destination B, what you should know. So when you create content like this, you would have essentially like informative content. So a person sitting in Jakarta, for example, would have to have a visa in place. They would also have like a transit airport in place. Now, obviously, pre-filling all this data is a lot of effort, but thanks to OpenAPI, we can just pretty much, pull in data, and that's already pre-filled here. But I'll obviously run a prompt to show you how you can essentially create further content as we go along. All right, so that's the whole way my sheet is structured into creating content for these key routes, because I'll be addressing a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 cities here, targeting the cities with the highest air traffic volume. So for example, Lima to Paris and so on and so forth. So now that I have my sheet already filled in and looking good, I can show you an example of how the OpenAPI works. So obviously I have an extension for it. It's the GPT for Sheets and Docs. If you want to set up an OpenAPI, you would just have to go to their website here, and then click on personal, view API keys. You will obviously be prompted to create an API key here. There's different pricing models based on the kind of language model that you want to use. But obviously you'll need to fill in your billing details if you want to proceed with the actual usage of the OpenAPI. So once that's done, let's take an example of here we go. So let's take the example of what's the best time to book a flight from Bangalore to Paris, the city where I'm currently sitting at. So for example, what I could do here is essentially type in GPT. What is the best time to book a flight from, and then we'll add in the value, which is my column, which is AC20. So that would be Bangalore to Paris, and the temperature set for this is 0.8. Tokens is essentially the number of tokens the API can use for this prompt. So let's give this 500. And the model to use this would be GPT 3.5-Turbo. You could obviously use the GPT-4 model, but that would make most sense if you're trying to do it for advanced reasoning or advanced concepts in the medical industry, the legal industry, and so on. If you're mainly focused on the travel industry and other simple industries, 3.5 works out perfectly fine. It's still built based on the Da Vinci model, which is the advanced model language, so you wouldn't have to worry about this simple prompts being incorrect or super simple. Essentially, it's going to give pretty good prompts. So let's see what prompt it generates for us. All right, it's loading, it's doing its thing. We'll give it some time, and we have a response. So it tells us that there's various factors such as on airline promotion, seasonal demand, personal preferences, and so on. It's generally recommended to book at a certain time frame, and then additional content is provided as we go along. An interesting thing with the GPT prompt is you could also do something like GPT and write something like show me points of, or rather, where's the GPT list? That's what I wanted to show you. So that's GPT. You have the edit, you have fill, list. I think the list is a pretty awesome factor, especially when you want to list out like points of interest in the city. So to give you a pretty good example, let's just type in list of points of interest in, the value would be in this scenario, Paris. So B20. 20. And yeah, let's give it the same temperature, 0.8. Max tokens, go ahead and use 500. Let's do GPT dash 3.5 turbo and generate, please. So yeah, I really like using the list feature a lot more. If you want to create content that's quite concise and precise, there you go. You have like a pretty good list of points of interest, and then you could further ask it to create descriptions for those points of interest and go on. So that's another niche website that you could potentially target as well. So now that I have this information, I could simply just drag this down, and it'll obviously do this for like Lima and Paris, Hyderabad to Paris, London to Paris, and so on and so forth. I already have Paris to Paris here. It shouldn't be there. Let me just remove this. Delete row. All right, done. All right, now it's generating content on when to book a flight. So that's pretty neat. So you could create additional questions and additional prompts, and proceed to add as you wish. You can also write like informative content, but I personally prefer writing content on like an FAQ style structure. So it kind of like addresses the points right away. And because we're targeting keywords that are not necessarily that competitive, this should also suffice, because keep in mind there is certain budgets associated with the API usage. So you also want to make sure that you don't end up with a massive bill. Obviously, OpenAPI does come with like pretty good usage limits, and you can like have a hard lock as to how much you want to spend per month. But nevertheless, it's nice to be smart with what kind of prompts you want to generate for what kind of queries. So I'm obviously not going to generate these kinds of prompts for all of the other regions, because that's like 10,000, and it's maybe I can do it another time. So this was rather just to show you an idea of how you could potentially use the OpenAPI to generate content for your pages or posts that you've created for these sites. Now, assuming that you have this sheet completely set up with all the regions, languages, and you have all the code in terms of widgets set up, what's the next thing? Obviously, you want to take this data and present it in the form of WordPress posts that Google can then consume and show to users. So all that you need to do is, for this example, we're obviously using travelpuck.com. So if you visit it right now, it's just an empty page with the default theme. In order to import this content, I use this plugin called as WP All Import. It lets me upload the CSV file, and then I can associate certain values of each field, so it can populate the data with what we have already generated. I'm a big fan of the Generate Press theme, and that's something that I want to switch to, mainly because it's super small. It also works with like when you have constraints on your server. It's always doing a great job, and I've never had issues with this theme at all. And it's fairly simple, but the usability in terms of like readability and accessibility, it's on point. All right, so let's install Generate Press and activate. All right, let's just quickly take a look at the site. Nothing found. That's what we want to see. Just an empty site with nothing to see. All right, perfect. So now let's jump to our plugin, which is the WP All Import. And now let's upload our file, which is ready to go. An important point that I probably forgot to mention is, how do we generate images, right? Obviously, here you could probably use another API to generate images based on the destination city, but obviously the cost involved there is quite high, because that's still in its infancy, and also the accuracy isn't all that great, especially when you want to do it at scale. So what I've done is I've essentially used like license-free images that I've hosted on ibb.co. It's a free image hosting site. So I'm going to essentially tell this plugin to go grab this image from that URL and then paste it on the site on each individual post. So for Paris, obviously, I have the most iconic landmark, which is the Eiffel Tower. If you go to Phuket, I have this. So kind of looks nice. And I will now proceed to download my file the CSV file. Let's download it as a CSV. And the file name is v2. Cool. All right. So now, let me jump to WP all import, upload a file. Let's go to v2 right here. Yeah, so it's just going to upload the file now, which contains obviously all the listings of roughly 10,000 destinations, but 16 actual high volume cities that the users want to go to. And in the meantime, what I could also potentially show is, oh well, let's give it some time. All right, so now we have the files that are uploaded. You've got create new posts. That's what I want to do. I'll jump to my second step now. And it should be able to detect, yep, 10,367. The average fields look like this. Excellent. This is what I want to see. Some of this content was already generated by OpenAI API, so it's looking good. Let me go ahead and jump to step 3. And here, let me assign what the title of the post should be. So that would be book cheap flights from destination to the end destination. And the next thing I want to do is fill in the content for each post. So here, I want to go ahead and write in, or rather pull in, the first script, which is essentially the search form. And then the next thing I want to pull in is the price calendar. So Q2, find the best date to travel from Paris with this price calendar. And that would be the MC2 version here. And then the next one, if I'm not wrong, is the popular routes. So let me just quickly grab that over on my site. Top 10 popular flight routes. Yep, that's it. That's the one. And for this, the associated script would be the MC3 one, and then top 5 schedule. So I'm not able to personalize the last widget, but I still feel it's better to have it in the form of providing useful content if it is a transit flight, because most of the times London always is the, if not, I think it's definitely the biggest transit airport, at least for the European hemisphere. So even if users that do fly in from non-EU countries, the likelihood or the probability of landing up in a transit flight to London is highly likely. So you might as well just have that. And choose the MC4 for this script. All right, so I have pretty good data filled in. Now, obviously, the next thing I want to take care or address is the content structure. So taking a flight from Jakarta to Paris, what you should know, that's like a proper headline. And then we have the associated content here. And the next thing is, the next question is how to reach the airport in Jakarta and the AI-generated content for that as well. And what are some airlines that fly from Jakarta to Paris would be the next title and the associated AI-generated content for it. And what would be the best time to book a flight from Jakarta to Paris and the associated content for this. All right, so we have all the content. We have the title ready. In terms of pulling in images, we want to pull it from the field which I showed earlier for the images. Yeah, that's the featured image here. I'm going to grab this and feed this in here. Obviously, download the images that are hosted elsewhere. Definitely. And yeah, categories. If you want to add in certain categories and structure it, you could obviously do it, but I won't be doing it for this example. So probably, if you want to add, you could just create one for each post, or try to map it to an existing category. And now with all the necessary fields filled in, I'm going to go ahead and proceed to step 4. And obviously, to make sure there's no conflicts in terms of the data when it's being grabbed, you want to make sure that you have some sort of a unique identifier. Obviously, there's never going to be another instance of Jakarta to Paris, for example. So I'm going to use this field here to let the tool know that this is a unique field, and it should always reference this field before creating any duplicate instance. With that done, you could also select like how do you want the pages to be broken up into chunks. Do only during the upload process so that the server doesn't overload or you don't have issues. I'll probably choose for this. Let's run it at 10 records. Actually, I want to stress test my server, so let's keep it at 20 and click continue. All right, so the file is ready. It's good to go. We have all the fields mapped out perfectly. So we can now generate roughly 10,000 posts targeting the high volume destination cities from towns that have a sizable population of roughly 100K or more, but definitely not the big ones. So let's go ahead and run it. Confirm and run import. And there we go. The import has begun. So 160 posts already created out of 10,367. The tool might potentially skip a couple of posts if it's not able to grab the image or there's some other issue that it might have run into. So that's perfectly natural and that's perfectly fine. I probably expect the skipped posts to probably go to around 150 to 200, but it's the vast majority of posts that you generate still get created. Then you could rerun the script to make sure that the ones that did get skipped get recreated again. So you're not missing out on those towns actually being skipped. Although it does in the first round, you can always fix it with running it on the next time. All right, so in roughly a minute, we've processed already close to 2,500 posts. So that's pretty good. So this is programmatic SEO at in life, or at least in replay as you see it whenever you do see it. And yeah, seems to be going well. So we'll give it some time, and I'll probably skip this video to the part where it jumps to 98 or 100%, and then we can go to the front end and see how the content actually looks like. All right, welcome back. Looks like the import is done. Of the 10,000 new posts that were created, 300 was skipped. Not a big margin of error. Obviously, we can rerun the script and have those records in there as well. So now let's go ahead and check out the site. And here we go. And there it is. So you have book cheap flights from Niigata to Hong Kong, and then you have the the search bar here, and then you also have like the price calendar with the expected prices. You also have the 10 most popular flight routes to Hong Kong essentially, and what are the daily flight schedules for some of the flights from Singapore to Hong Kong in this scenario. Other than that, let's take a look at the one which we actually filled in a lot of AI content. So that would be Jakarta. And no, that would be Jakarta to Paris. So Jakarta to Paris. And there it is, book cheap flights. So here you've also got, the content that's perfectly filled in as we wanted. And then we have like, what are the various airlines that fly from Jakarta to Paris? What is the best time to book a flight? And so this is it. You've got pretty good content written for all these travel pages. Obviously, you're giving the first load, which is the user experience for these widgets here, which shows, how you can book a flight. And if somebody's interested in clicking on the price calendar, for example, they just tap on it and it'll take you directly to the site for that specific date, as well as the origin and destination. So again, like I said, this platform is pretty cool for monetizing with the affiliate. traffic. And yeah, so this is it. This is what programmatic SEO is. You can go back to the dashboard. We can look at the posts like an overview, and obviously you can see all the posts that were created, 10,006. And if we want to introduce new features or new content over time, we can just simply create columns. We can go ahead and create more prompts for like points of interest. So we are always enhancing content, and then it's a matter of just going back to the script and addressing and updating the entire content over again. So this is programmatic SEO for the travel niche site. So if you've got any questions, feel free to let us know. Always happy to share more insights as and when available. And yeah, thanks so much for your time. I hope you found this informative. I'm sure you're all eager to get cracking at using pSEO for whatever niche that you think would be awesome. So feel free to do that. And yeah, thanks again for your time. Have a nice day. See you guys. Bye-bye.